Alright everyone, it's time for the Occult video 138, My Pagan Path. I thought people would be interested in this. I still get a lot of people. Usually they're like Abrahamists, or they pretend to be and they're just shills, honestly. They arrive here, they talk about me on 4chan, whatever, and they say, oh, he's a Satanist, and, that means he's part of like this Illuminati conspiracy or something. I keep pointing out, I don't understand why people don't recognize this. I haven't been involved within Satanism for half a decade. And I was never involved with the Church of Satan. I saw them as like a fallen sort of corporate entity, which is what they are, sparring actually with their own public representative in several messages on several occasions regarding the topic of the occult. Of course, I think wasn't it before 2012, like the Mayan crap? What I was trying to do is get a bunch of occultists together, and we are going to sort of like hang out live, like online, and do some ritualism, just to like troll people. And, sometimes the like alt media of the internet write such things up, and then you get, you bring attention to some sort of movement in some way. And I was trying to do that, and I actually contacted the Church of Satan. I actually sent off an email. And basically what I got was, oh, that's a retarded idea. We don't believe in togetherness. We don't believe in the occult. Blah, blah, blah. If you make the mistake of not being fully versed on Satanism when you ask their representative a question at the Church of Satan, then you get an earful about how there's something wrong with you. Even though, that's kind of what asking questions is usually about. Oh, can you clear this up for me? And they actually, you can see why the Church of Satan is no longer a dynamic force in the world, when their public representative spends most of her time insulting people, unless they're already members of the Church of Satan. And of course, their application requirements are essentially, are you 18 and will you pay us $200? That's their application process. All this other crap about, oh, what's your job, what are your hobbies, what makes you accept, they don't care about that. They want your money. It's a corporate entity. It's very above board. I'll give them credit for that. There's no real veil over it other than some of the mock-up ritualism of like dark inverted Catholicism or something, but they're all atheists. So I was never a member of their order because I was more of an agnostic at the time anyway. Like I had gone through atheism and then I sort of transferred into agnosticism. I'm like, well, I'm not sure. And then into like apatheism and didn't really care. But at the same time, I am still a pagan. I'm an occultist and I'm a pagan. I believe unironically in forces that are beyond current human comprehension. Now, does this mean that I get into this too spooky sort of stuff and say, oh, well, there are spirits everywhere and there are deities and angels and demons and all this other crap? Not really. I secularize when I can. I believe that to be fair-minded, to be intelligent, you have to first look for rational explanations for any phenomena that you happen to witness. For instance, Bigfoot. Let's assume that it exists at all. What is it most likely? Is it more likely to be some sort of demonic spirit from Native American shamanism, or is it more likely to be some sort of near-extinct hominid that just happens to live out in dense wilderness? Probably the latter. Of course, we can't necessarily judge because we don't have a specimen, but if I'm going to prefer one of those explanations over the other for the purposes of simplicity, I'm going to go along with science and say, well, it's some sort of physical creature, not spiritual. It simply happens to be something we haven't quantified that might be unique and interesting and marginally intelligent. Maybe it's like a caveman tribe that just lives in some, tunnels up in Washington State and Oregon and Northern California. Maybe there's a few hundred of these individuals scattered around. We just haven't found them because they're intelligent enough not to want to associate with us. Or like the Loch Ness Monster. I don't know that there's a giant serpent in Loch Ness. I generally would prefer the, cut off, freshwater whale population or some large eels that have simply gone eunuch mode and they keep growing and never breed, and so they look kind of gigantic, or a sturgeon or something like that. And of course there's hoaxes, and that's something we always have to be aware of. But my pagan beliefs go further than that. I'll write a book at some point on the topic of how I fuse anthropology with sort of the north side of paganism. But I believe mixed pantheons are fine as well. I unironically have a sort of veneration and respect for the caricature of Thor, for my own personal reasons that I've never gotten into. Kek, an actual Egyptian deity. You may say, well, it's ironic or that's sort of cringy or autistic or whatever. This is like the Necronomicon. The Necronomicon's ritualism has nothing to do with any authentic past sort of ritualism from Sumeria, let alone from a book, since they didn't have books at the time. They wrote on clay tablets. So Simon, when he wrote the Necronomicon, most of that stuff is just fluff. It's his idea of a way to sell a book, and he did quite well, and there's nothing, by the way, wrong with that. People still use it literally in many cases. But the symbols, the figures, the archetypes, those are real. The idea of Marduk and so forth, that's very much real within that sort of system. You're invoking actual entities. Kek is the same way. And within the concept of chaos and memetics, it doesn't matter if you're venerating it according to any authentic ritual system. What makes the authentic even necessarily important in a ritual context if you believe in it at all? Maybe the ancients, maybe their rituals were wrong and didn't work properly because they were wrong too, and your modern ritual form is actually better than the original. And nobody wants to think of this. They want to think of some like leather-bound tomes and ancient robed freaks wandering around, and they had the authentic spirituality. And it's sort of just like the golden age utopian throwback of pastoralism. It's really just a philosophical thing that happens from a population, an urban population generally, largely disconnected from nature and antiquity, and not fully understanding man's timeline, but being very interested in it. And third to that, I'd say Stolas, because I've actually seen Stolas. Now, this is a being from the Ars Goetia. It's not really a deity so much as it is listed there as a demonic entity. But I don't believe in it in that sense. I having seen and interacted more or less with this being, or with this force, or with this archetype, whatever you want to term it, I can say I believe that there's something realistic there that goes beyond my current understanding of science, that I can't fully quantify in it. I don't necessarily say, oh, some disembodied spirit visited me, gave me magical powers or something. No, what I'm saying is that I witnessed something that is describable according to authentic occult tradition, but which I can't currently completely quantify or prove, and I don't ask that anyone else even believe that the events actually happened. You weren't there, so you don't just take my word for it. You can be as skeptical as you want. You're not going to piss me off. Same with all this other stuff. I get atheists all the time. They come to me and say, oh, how can you, Satanist, how can you believe in Satan? I'm like, well, Satanism doesn't have anything to do with an actual Satan. It's a symbol, and I'm not even a Satanist anymore. They say, pagan, oh, how can you believe in all this? It's like, you've probably never studied these things. Years ago, when I was an atheist, I always told atheists, please, do read the Bible. Know more about it than those people that you frequently debate if you want to prevail in those debates. The same would be true of like paganism. If you've never studied, if you've never read the Poetic Eddas or any of this other material, and you don't know anything about Norse paganism or Wicca or any of these other traditions, how the hell are you supposed to step toe-to-toe with somebody who's actually studied them? Let alone somebody who literally makes their living taking occult texts, reading through them over and over, editing them, and releasing them. How the hell are you supposed to know more about what the occult means than somebody who has literally spent half a decade doing little other than studying these things? As for literally their job. Self-employed, yeah, but literally their job. You don't know anything about the occult. You don't even know what it boils down to. You think that it's all like black cats and broomsticks. That's a Christian ideology wrapped around what was once traditional magic and then projected upon witchcraft by a bunch of Burning Times Christians and to some degree Muslims and Jews who wanted to suppress these activities that they were looking for things that weren't even there. They ended up burning a bunch of old women with cerebral palsy and a bunch of disobedient children and people who dared to dabble with herbal medicine. Has not even really anything to do with like pagan occultism or anything like that. So I unironically venerate these symbols and keep them in mind. That doesn't mean like I don't have like a stone altar to Thor in the backyard and that sort of stuff. I don't go around wearing like the Stolas seal and all that stuff because I don't see that as necessary. I simply have passive interactions at will with certain powers or with certain forces that I don't bother to say I can fully quantify because I know I can't, and I don't really care that I can't. As far as deities themselves, as far as deities in the Judeo-Christian sense of a creative and all-powerful force, I'm apatheistic. If there is such a force, it wouldn't rule out occultism being real. If there is such a force, I'm not going to venerate it because I've seen no reason to. There's no evidence for such a being, and many of them are, the way they're described, is kind of tyrannical and opposite to what I believe in an ethical sense anyway, so I don't really care. And if there's not, well, then there's not. Who cares? It doesn't affect my life one way or the other if there's a Jesus up there in the sky or you know, an Allah or something. I don't care. I'm too busy doing my thing. Maybe I just have one life to live. Why would I waste my time thinking about stuff that I can never quantify anyway? I'd rather delve into the historical side of the occult especially, and stemming from that the philosophical side that affects my personal life. So that's my pagan path. I do believe in these entities or figures or forces. Again, take it as you will, because I can't prove their status one way or the other, nor that they even exist. I can't prove that to anyone. I can't wave my hand and send fire cascading out of it. And even if I could, by the way, with Photoshop and video editing and all the other tricks of the trade today, you wouldn't even know it was real anyway. Somebody could photograph a ghost. It's like people say, oh, well, UFO footage is always grainy. If it weren't grainy, you'd probably say it was CGI. It was just rendered in. You know, like by a Hollywood studio on April Fool's Day and then released later or something. There is no way to prove these things. None of the ways we have in which to externally record them can't be faked anyway, so it's pointless. Don't bother. If you have religious beliefs, don't bother debating anybody about them in the first place. List them, speak about them, give your say, have your opinion heard. Or spiritual beliefs, or whatever it happens to be. In my case, it's, you know, it's literal magic combined with some pagan elements and a little bit of other stuff, you know, dashed in here and there. I can talk about them, but I'm not going to sit there bothering to debate people. People say, oh, debate this atheist, debate this Christian. No, I'm not going to waste my time. I'm going to talk about what I believe in. Debating them won't do any good. It's so subjective. All of these like attributes of some god or some magical system, they're so subjective, so malleable, and so impossible to prove or disprove. It's pointless. It's almost pointless to debate over spiritual matters anymore. There is no point to it. So that's a little bit about my own path. That's about all. Peace out.